love the chase and the hunt, and I set the...
What's up, my good people of the internet? It is Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. I'm hanging out with you where sports meets that thing called life. I hope you're having yourself a great night, and obviously we are here for a special Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. I decided to come on the air, hang out with you, and spend some time following the Syracuse at Pitt game, and this obviously being the post-game show. So we're going to talk about this. We're going to have some fun with this conversation, and, you know, I want to get your thoughts. A lot of fans were writing in. A lot of fans were saying things to me on the feeds that we were running and whatnot. So I want to know what's going on. I want to know how you're feeling. I want you to send it over. I want you to get yourself involved with the show. So make sure you send over your thoughts to our live feed, youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, as well as facebook.com/wakeupcalldt. So however you're connecting with the show today, shoot us over a message. Let me know what you're thinking, and let's have the conversation. You know, we got to have the conversation, and you know, I want to see what's on your mind. And this is a tough game, right? Syracuse loses the game 19-9. Reminiscent to me of the game where Syracuse went with A.J. Long, a fourth-string quarterback. I went with A.J. Long to Clemson, lost the game 16-6, and just couldn't figure anything out. So this one is reminiscent of that to me, where the defense came out and did some good things, but the offense just wasn't scoring the ball at all. And it's frustrating, it's tough, but it's reality, right? It's where we're sitting at right now, and at Syracuse is 6-3 currently, so it's definitely a tough pill to swallow and a tough game to go back and look at, but we're going to go back and look at it here in this post-game show. So we do want to thank you for tuning in every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, which is our normal schedule for Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on youtube.com, facebook.com, and mixlr.com, all /wakeupcalldt. You'll also find us on wakeupcalldt.com's homepage and on facebook.com /live-now-dt inside of these Cafe Kubal studios. Cafe Kubal located for you all throughout central and upstate New York. They are on 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 401 South Salina Street, all in Syracuse, New York. You also find them on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road at Sweetheart Corners, and that is in their drive-thru location in North Syracuse, and you'll find them on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York, in their giant behemoth of a brown-striped building. So make sure you send us over your thoughts. Let me know what you're taking in here as we're inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. I want to hear what you're thinking, what's on your mind. Let's have the discussion. Like I said, a lot of fans saying things and seeing the feed and whatnot. And so I want you to have the opportunity to share those thoughts in a cohesive place, doing it on this post-game show. So happy to have you here. Thank you for being here. And it's time for us to get into it. So, you know, I mean, this was a tough game to watch. It's a tough game to see. I think a lot of people are very, very frustrated. And, you know, we're out here just trying to figure things out, right? Syracuse not looking good in these last three games and against better opponents, right? The games got harder, the teams got tougher, and Syracuse has not been showing out well when they've been playing in these tougher games. And that's not a good sign for this team where they're struggling against, you know, and when they're struggling against teams that they're supposed to be able to compete against, right? You could be 6-0, but when you're 6-0, you got to sit here and say, okay, 6-0 against who? And then you see that, and, you know, I think they had a good game against Purdue, who has a strong quarterback. Thought they had a good game against Virginia, who has a strong quarterback. I thought they had a good game against Louisville, who has a strong quarterback. So, you know, it's not like they haven't played well defensively, but, you know, this offense has gotten quiet, and we see only 5 touches in the Clemson game for Sean Tucker. In this game, he had 9 touches, and this one was a tough one to stomach here. He only needed 55 yards to rise above Larry Zonka to be 4th all-time in Syracuse career rushing yards, but this was not the game where it was going to happen. It didn't get done, and we see where we're at right now, and Syracuse is undeniably struggling against better opponents that have had more physical defenses. We know that Pitt runs a very physical defense. You know that Dabo Sweeney is going to bring it. And now, beyond that, you're looking at the fact that, Notre Dame, their guys were just big. They were ready. I think Notre Dame's better. They were better equipped to go up against Syracuse. And I know that, Syracuse, to me, I thought that they were going to be able to do some things against Notre Dame. But, Syracuse really didn't do anything against Notre Dame. It showed, and here in the Pittsburgh game, they have struggled greatly, and it's been outrageously frustrating to see it. I think the fans are really weighing in and giving their take now. A lot of people have an issue with Sean Tucker not getting the ball, the play calling, and, ultimately, Syracuse only had one red zone attempt, and, actually they had, let's see here, it says that they had one red zone attempt, but they also had the ball on the 1 yard line as well. So I don't know why it says that here. And that was a tough one too. Sean Tucker on the one and doesn't get it in here. And I'm thinking, fake it, throw over the top, send Aronde Gadsden out, or pitch it outside to Sean Tucker. You're not going to run up the gut on Pittsburgh, and with this offensive line that Syracuse has right now, that's definitely been struggling. So, I just feel like you got to get more creative. You have to play to your strengths. You got to figure things out. And, that's where you got to be. Your thoughts and reply with your thoughts and opinions on Syracuse Orange football. So make sure you send these over to us and put it in to youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, facebook.com/wakeupcalldt, whatever you're on. Send over your thoughts. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you're feeling, and we're gonna get through this together. I had somebody tell me a while back. He said, "Dan, you're my therapist, right? I listen to the show so that I can, essentially sit on your couch and give my thoughts and my opinions." So send your thoughts and your opinions over. Let me know what's going on. Let me know, what's going through your head right now. We're going to break this game down. I'm very happy to break this game down with you and to just kind of take away where you take, what's kind of on your mind right now. And I'm more than happy to have the conversation. So this is where we're at. This is where Syracuse is at. Really tough game for the Orange in this one, and just couldn't get things done. Net rushing yards 25 against this Pittsburgh defense, and Pitt, even without Abanikanda, Isaac and I in Tortora and Elford in our show going into this matchup, we were talking about Abanikanda, 1,086 yards coming into this game, 5.9 yards a carry, 16 rushing touchdowns, and he was a game-time decision, and he didn't play, and still Pitt was able to run all over Syracuse, and that's something that was really killer. They got 161 yards on the ground. They had 2 rushing touchdowns without Abanikanda, and, but this is Pitt, right? Next man up. They get a guy, the guy's good, that guy goes on to the NFL or finishes up their eligibility, it's on to the next one, and they do it again, and they do it again, and they do it again. It's essentially LL Cool J. When it comes to Pitt running the ball, they're doing it well, and that's, it's 161 yards without your bell cow, and you got to give them credit here. Pitt, ultimately, when we break it down and take a look at their rushing, Hammond Jr., he had 28 carries for 124 yards and a touchdown, 4.4 yards a carry. Anytime you allow a 100-yard back, putting yourself in a bad position. Flemister, 12 attempts, 42 yards, 3.5 yards a carry, and he had a touchdown as well. Davis got involved a little bit, only had a couple carries in the game, but as a team, Slovis lost 10 yards, and so, you put that into like sacks and trying to scramble, so it's 161 yards. But if you look at the actual rushes taken out, Slovis scrambling and different things happening within the pocket or out of the pocket, you look at Flemister, Davis, and Hammond Jr., and you add all that up together, and they totaled in this game 174 yards at the 3 running backs did. And Slovis, man, listen, 16 of 23, 178 yards. He had a pick, did not have a touchdown in the game, but, he did what he needed to do. And this Syracuse defense did some good things, but at the same time, I think, you let Slovis look a little bit better than maybe he is. And that's something that's a party foul, right, for Syracuse, that Slovis was able to get to the outside. He was able to run when he needed to on the sideline, and he was able to make some big-time throws. I mean, Syracuse in the open field was not getting two guys quick enough. And so, I mean, and again, if the defense is going to be on the field the majority of the game, you're putting yourself in a questionable situation. And I did get a message here after the game, so I want to appreciate my dude writing out to me. And all these guys mean the world to me. They know that. Win, lose, or draw. And Jatias JT Gear said, appreciate it. I'm all good. So he came off, was carded off, but he told me he's good and loves seeing this. And, I just definitely happy for him that he's okay. So Jatias JT Gear publicly sent me a message here letting me know that he's all right. So that's a good thing. JT Gear, starter on the defensive line at DN for Syracuse, and letting me know that things are good. So good to hear that. That's some good news coming off of this, because Syracuse has had to do this next man up approach, and it's been really trying for the Orange, right? Because they've dealt with a lot of injuries. Jihad Carter got popped in this game as well. So, when it comes down to it, you really hope that these guys can stay healthy. But even staying healthy defensively, listen, they forced three straight drives by Pitt in the fourth quarter to become 3-and-outs. And Syracuse got nothing really to show for the majority of the time that this defense is getting after it. This wasn't a game, and I said it going into the game. I said it multiple times on multiple episodes of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. I said Pitt would love a 17-6 game. Pat Narduzzi would love it. He'd go home with that. He'd eat that up. A 17-6 game would be perfect for them, totally fine for them. It means that they're playing good defense, running the ball. And what was the score right before the end of the game? It was 17-6 for a while, and I had called that score. That's the type of game that I expected in this. And for Pitt to win, I picked Pitt to win this game. And ultimately, I said I think a few more points would be scored, but I had stated over and over again that 17-6 to me was the score that would be perfect for Pat Narduzzi and the team, that they would be happy with it and they'd get out of this alive. And they end up winning the game 19-9 after giving me the exact score that I had predicted, which was 17-6. I got to shout out Syracuse native and CBA alum who harassed Syracuse. Wait for it. Again. Not the first time he's done it, he did it again. Syracuse native and CBA alum, Pitt linebacker Servassier Dennis went to the same school that I did, Christian Brothers Academy. Dino could literally ride a tricycle from Manly or the Ensley complex, I should say, to Christian Brothers Academy, and he would have been able to sit there and chat with Servassier Dennis. That tricycle ride would maybe take him 15, 20 minutes, depending on how fast he pedals. And looking at what Servassier did in this game, he sacked Carlos Del Rio Wilson to force the field goal by Andre Schmidt, the 49-yarder. Schmidt had missed from 46. It looked like it had the length. It looked like it had the height. It was flying down the field, and he missed from 46. He hit from 49. Credit to him for that. Don't be knocking Andre Schmidt. He rarely misses. He had a couple field goals early in the game, got a third one in the game, went 3 of 4 in the game. So, you can't knock him for the way he played. But looking at Servassier Dennis for Pittsburgh, this is a man who wasn't getting a ton of offers, played quarterback at CBA, transitioned to linebacker, went to prep school, put on a ton of weight, and when Pat Narduzzi and his staff came to talk to Casey Brown at CBA, they were looking at another guy, and Casey said, you got to check out Servassier Dennis, and Pat Narduzzi had one of his guys check the tape. He saw the tape, and he said, why have we not looked at this guy? They end up seeing him go to prep school. They offer him. Syracuse did not offer Servassier Dennis, and Servassier in this game, like I said, made Syracuse pay again. He's the one who sacked Carlos Del Rio Wilson to force the field goal by Schmidt from 49 yards instead of having a shot for the touchdown. Then, right after he forced that field goal, he ran down the field on special teams. Some guys have egos, refuse to play on special teams. Nah, I'm a starter on defense. He's a starting linebacker. He's a captain of the team, and he would, put me out on special teams, runs out there on special teams. Trevor Pena lets the ball go beyond him, and we see that he makes Syracuse start at their own 1 yard line. That was on the punt, pardon me. I think I said kickoff. It was on the punt. He gets down on special teams as a starting linebacker, put Syracuse on the 1 yard line where the defense would cause a safety on the very next play. So he helped set that up. Syracuse native, CBA alum, led the Pitt Panthers with 8 total tackles, had a sack in the game and a forced fumble, never given an offer from the Orange down the street from CBA. And like I said, he made Syracuse pay again. So, and he said, he got asked the question, and I've already talked to him about Syracuse not offer him and this and that. So we didn't have this discussion in ACC kickoff because him and I had already had the discussion. But somebody had asked him, what do you think about Syracuse not offering you and this and that? He said, I don't talk about schools that didn't show me love. And he moved on. Pitt showed him love. Pat Narduzzi, think about this. This man makes it, not a ton of offers, gets onto this team, works his way into the rotation, gets in the starting lineup, is now a captain, playing up against the school that represents his hometown, leads in tackles, gets a sack, forces a fumble, makes you start on your 1 yard line, and sacks Carlos Del Rio Wilson to prevent a touchdown. He did it all and then some. And, I just got to give Servassier Dennis a ton of credit because he deserves it. Very, very much so. So if you got thoughts on the game, send it through. Let me know what you're thinking, and would definitely like to hear from you all if you have a thought on the game. I know we had a lot of thoughts that came through. I'm going to read some of these thoughts that we had, and so let's take a look at some of the things that I do know have come through here. A lot of fans frustrated, and so we had, seems to me they just ran out of gas after the Clemson game. Go Orange, that's from Joe G. Michael S. said, are you kidding me? They gave us the ball practically in the red zone. We run 4 plays and can't get any points. And then Michael also said, I don't want to sound too pessimistic, but would anyone be shocked if we finish 6-7? That's including a bowl loss from what I'm seeing here. Jordan G. said, crappy game. So people having some frustration here. JJ said, hey, coaches, it's not working for the 3rd game in a row, all in caps. Maybe you could change the strategy, both offensive and defensive, and mix it up some. Mike W. said it was unwatchable. Terry P. said Baber ball in response to that. Fred D. said, where's the quarterback run? Offense is terrible. Robert T. had a picture of somebody putting a hand over their face for Bob's Burgers. And then, Joanne F. said she also said unwatchable. So that's where we're sitting at now with some of these things coming in and some of these thoughts. I put that the offensive plan for Syracuse seemed to be no plan. And the comments I got from you, James M. said, great field position, absolutely wasted. And Dino with his deer in headlights look. Andre M. said, way too many injuries, not enough decent backups. It is what it is, shrugging his shoulders. JJ said, coaches have had a week to prepare plans, plays and more on both sides of the ball. Granted, injuries and newbies, but you work around that with creative play calling. I agree with that. You play to your strengths. Good coaching staff find ways to make adjustments. Amen to that. Dave Clausen does a great job at that at Wake, and Syracuse has to play them in 2 games. Jordan G. said, so how long before Babers does the Marone Schaefer disappearing trick, gets out of the city? And then we had from Robert C. I don't see any emotion from these coaches at all. It's absolutely embarrassing. When Tucker gets the ball, he's down almost immediately, if he's even touched. I think some of these guys need to be reamed out. I'm embarrassed for them. Horrible play calling, no emotion, just really bad. He also said, I think we need a better approach for conditioning as we have more and more injuries. Almost every series just embarrassing. Ernest F. said, y'all keep saying injuries, but the offense is almost whole. The offensive has been the problem. And Mike R. said, maybe in the future, but right now this kid is not ready for prime time. He's speaking of Carlos. I don't knock Carlos. He got thrown into this thing Folks, listen, this is Carlos Del Rio Wilson's first start ever as a Syracuse football player here coming from Florida. Michael S. said good night, and then also said Gadsden could have moonwalked into the end zone if the pass was on target. And I'll go to that drive in a second. Jim B. shared Narduzzi has Baber's number. Baber said going into the game at the press conference I was at, he said, listen, I've never won there. He said, I've never won against Pat Narduzzi and Pitt, and it's true. Austin R. said Tucker is done getting carries. Dan W. said they're back, which I guess is his way of, kind of being sarcastic that the team's not winning. And then Ryan G. said called it after Clemson loss, 5-game swoon. And then Brian M. said with backup quarterback plan should be Tucker left, Tucker right, Tucker up the middle. Paul C. said, so sad Syracuse stopped playing after they got a bid for the bowl. So that's what you guys are saying. And definitely, and just got a message here, and what I've been saying about Servassier. Nate wrote in to me on Twitter at CallDT. Appreciate it. Nate S. said Dino with the biggest fumble, not giving him an offer. Speaking of Servassier, he absolutely torched Syracuse. So a lot of you are weighing in and have weighed in throughout the game to some messages that I put up and some thoughts. So thank you for sending those over. A lot of you are frustrated that Tucker did not get the ball. He got the ball just a few times in this game. And people say, well, Dan, if they're not running well, listen, if running Tucker up the gut isn't working, then you switch it and you put him someplace else. You run him out somewhere else. I have said for multiple games now that all they need to do with Tucker, and granted, when you have Garrett Schrader, he has more of a relationship with Tucker than Carlos Del Rio Wilson at this point. But when you have a guy like Tucker, if it's not working up the middle, you know that he can make plays in space. When he has a guy of separation or two guys separation, he can make a play in space with the ball. That's why you pass it out to him. That's why you run a screen for him. That's why you leave him in the backfield. You pitch it to him, get him to the outside. If this line is collapsed, think about this. The way the line played with Carlos Del Rio Wilson, it collapsed. And that's why I said you can't sit here and yell at Carlos Del Rio Wilson and say that he's, he's not a good quarterback, he wasn't ready, yada, yada, yada. Because the reality of it all is this guy comes in, makes his first start for Syracuse, he's young in the trenches here, and this line was just giving plays up. Pittsburgh was harassing the hell out of him, pushing him around just like Notre Dame did. And I think Pitt had 6 sacks in the game, one of those being from Servassier Dennis, the Syracuse native. And think about it. When you hike the ball, if you're only getting maybe 2 seconds, pitch it out, right? Get it away. Get it out of there. Carlos Del Rio Wilson has some speed, but he's having trouble. It would have worked, something I've said for multiple weeks now, for him to hike the ball, and even with that line not blocking Pitt well, even with them collapsing, you hike the ball, and in that 1.2 seconds, 1.4, 1.7, 2.3, you pitch it out, you let Tucker go, because everybody's collapsing on Carlos, so then you force the ball outside. Listen, coaches have to make adjustments. You have to be able to be smart with this. Okay, that's what needs to happen. And Rob Drummond, my guy right now, he said, does any of those posting ever play? Then tired of these armchair quarterbacks guessing about things they can't do. So, any of the people posting ever play? So, it's listen, people got their opinions. They have their thoughts. People saying that Syracuse is giving up, I know these guys. And nobody's trying to lose. Nobody's trying to give up. I'm trying to come up with, when a negative thing happens, you always try to spin it to a positive. And in spinning things to the positive side of things, when you see, like I said, that offensive line giving up a lot, collapsing, and that pocket getting tiny quick, you pitch the ball to the outside. Get the ball to the outside, okay? Carlos didn't have time a lot of these times to look down the field. He didn't have a lot of these times to even look to his side and throw it to Tucker. So pitch it to Tucker, get it out, put him in shotgun, give him a little bit of space, right? You move the guy into shotgun to give him an opportunity to have an extra second, half a second. If this line is going to collapse, don't put him up against the line. Put him in a shotgun formation. Put Tucker on the side. I don't know why we're not seeing LaQuint Allen Jr. out there. That could be helpful. Have two guys out here. Have a decoy. If everybody's going to Tucker and everybody's going to Oronde Gadsden, utilize LaQuint Allen. There's things that this coaching staff can do. I'm not going to knock them and say that they don't know anything that they're doing, because that's not fair to say, right? A lot of people have never coached a game in their life. So I'm not saying these coaches don't know a play call, but we can always get better. You can always adjust. And I think Syracuse has just done a really poor job of adjusting. And second half adjustments under Dino Babers, we have seen consistently that he doesn't make adjustments. And I think one of the most egregious ones is Dave Clawson of Wake. When Clawson can be down by multiple touchdowns like he was at the Dome a few years ago, come back and win a game, whatever it was, 63-45 or something like that. So, ultimately it comes down to Coach and Coach Babers, seeing, and Jason Beck, the quarterback coach, seeing how poor this offensive line was, put Carlos in a shotgun formation, because we know that he's got speed too, and we know that he can run. So put him in the shotgun where you give him an opportunity to see a little bit more of the field, to be able to take off maybe a little bit quicker and have a little bit more of an opportunity. Pitch the ball out to Sean Tucker multiple times, get him away from the center of the line, force him to go outside, because what Pittsburgh was seeing was the same thing over and over and over again, right? And what's the definition of insanity? Seeing the same thing over and over again and not making a change, right? Continuing to do the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result. So back Carlos up, pitch it out to Tuck, and at the same time, play to the strengths. You got Carlos Del Rio Wilson, who can run an option. He can run the RPO. He's got speed. Tucker will run with him. Tuck wants the ball, I'm sure. So, just RPO it. Get that going out there. There's no reason why, when you have a back like Sean Tucker, that this game should see him not get that many carries and just get gobbled up like that. You're not going to run the way this offensive line is playing. You're not going to run at Pitt. You're not going to push Pitt around. Servassier Dennis, Deslin Alexander, these guys are not going to back up for anybody. And I know that the record coming into this game was 4-4, and I don't think that was an adequate representation of Pitt, because they are punch down, drag out, hit you in the mouth. Granted, look at what they did. I mean, Tennessee, even with the loss today to Georgia, I still consider Tennessee to be one of the top 3, top 4 best teams in America right now. Still the team you don't want to play. Pitt went into overtime with Tennessee, and they beat Tennessee last year. So I don't think 4-4 is an adequate record assessment of how good this team is, and how good Pat Narduzzi is defensively. I mean, he said it after the game. He said, "My defense played good all game, all game." That's big words coming from a coach. The defense here at Pitt had a complete game, and they did. So you have to get more creative, and you got to do different things. I like that Carlos Del Rio Wilson, the commentator said that was only DeMarcus Adams' 4th catch of the season, but that's because nobody's throwing to him, if he's even allowed to go out there on the field. So, you have to think about these things. It's not because DeMarcus Adams can't get open. It's not because DeMarcus Adams isn't good. It's not because he doesn't have good hands. He's not going out there. And every quarterback has their guy. And you got to think about it. If Carlos Del Rio Wilson is practicing with the 2s a lot this season, and DeMarcus Adams is a 2, and maybe Courtney Jackson is a 2, and Trevor Pena is a 2, something like that, and Anthony Quealy, then you got to think about it. You got to put those guys out there. And my guy, Isaac, who does Tortora and Elford with me, Isaac Elford, him and I were talking about it off the air before I, turn the lights on here in the studio to bring you this post-game show. And he said it, DeMarcus Adams is probably out there practicing with Carlos Del Rio Wilson. He probably knows him really well. So it would make perfect sense for them to be out there together and be utilizing, their strengths, because they know each other well. So it's just one of those things that we really need to, go back and look at. He is spreading the ball out. He is trying. He's not afraid to beam it down the field. I don't want people knocking Carlos Del Rio Wilson, because I don't think it's fair. like I said, how many people are going to play great in their first ever start for a team? So I don't think we can really sit here and see all of this. Morgan J said, injuries not good enough to withstand injuries yet, but this team is better. I appreciate the positive there. Morgan, thank you for that. Joel B said that was easy to see. Had a week to create some easy pass slants for the kid to be successful. Nope. Heck of a coach we're stuck with is what we got here. So some people really not happy. Andre M said this one hurts. This kid had so much talent and we missed out on him. Speaking of Servassier Dennis. Bernard B said Pitt been out recruiting us in our own backyard. They also got the 2 kids from Buffalo this past summer. I've also said that Buffalo inside of the MAC, which is ironically where Dino was before he came to the ACC for Syracuse. I made the comment that, here's Dino in the MAC coaching Bowling Green, and now Buffalo in the MAC is doing a better job at recruiting right now with Dino inside of the ACC. So, tough pill to swallow, guys. I do appreciate your comments coming in. I do appreciate many of you making your comments, I don't want to say clean, but that you've refrained from being, swearing out here. Tracy said, got to find a better way. We're still going bowling. There's a bigger picture. Get healthy is the way to finish a good season. Because I said, and this is in response to my post, at the time I said 9 carries for Sean Tucker is unacceptable to me. Kevin G said, I agree. Terry said, it was addressed according to Babers. And then we saw Cody U said they're not opening the playbook for Del Rio. He's not playing like last week. And then let's see what we got here. Got another message that came in. Ice said inexcusable, made no changes at all. Very upset about the coaching. Doug C said doesn't matter. He can't do anything. 25 yards rushing for Cuse. Wow. Andy J said zero confidence in the O-line. Charlie E said penalties plus both sides of the line dominated. Pat Orr from PB&J's Lunchbox, she said not good play calling. So you guys are all weighing in. I appreciate the thoughts and just getting all of these messages from you all. And like I said, I thank you from refraining from swearing too, because sometimes people get a little bit crazy with some of this stuff. But I do appreciate the messages coming in, and yeah, I mean it's tough. It's a 1,000,000% tough, and it's definitely rough to see some of the stuff going on with Syracuse at this time, and the frustration that comes from seeing a game like this. I mean, the team started out 6-0, and I know some people are going to tell me, Dan, they didn't play anybody, and I don't agree with that. Again, I think that Aiden O'Connell, the Purdue quarterback, to me, he, in my opinion, is an NFL quarterback, and Brennan Armstrong, Virginia, is going to get a look in the NFL at quarterback. I think that the first week of the season, looking at Syracuse, what they had to go up against at Louisville, going and facing up against Louisville, and granted they beat him, but Malik Cunningham, I think he's an NFL quarterback that's going to get some looks. So you look at that 6-0 start, and 50% of the time they were playing NFL caliber quarterbacks, in my opinion. So yeah, Louisville might not have been ranked that high, and I don't think they were ranked at all. So Louisville wasn't ranked, but Malik Cunningham's still good. Purdue had been ranked at times, but Aiden O'Connell, and they gave Penn State hell. But Aiden O'Connell, to me, I mean, 424 yards, 4 touchdowns, and Syracuse still found a way to win. Says a lot about the Orange's resiliency. And then, Brennan Armstrong, he had a chance at the end to win the game too, and Syracuse just played really awesome defense, and I give him credit for that. Guys stepping in, knocking balls down, backup corners coming in, stepping up and doing big things. So, ultimately, I don't think you can say 6-0 was against nobody, because, in my opinion, 50% of that 6-0 at least were against NFL caliber quarterbacks that I think are going to get a shot either getting drafted or at least getting into a rookie mini camp and an opportunity at training camp for Malik Cunningham, Aiden O'Connell, and Brennan Armstrong. So, the Wagner game is the Wagner game. Everybody plays a game like that for the most part, and I don't think anybody could sit here and scoff at Syracuse for playing Wagner. Alabama plays those games. Clemson plays those games. A lot of these teams play those games, and the SEC is notorious for playing a cupcake or two. And, we see that around the league. And Ohio State, for goodness sakes, it's like a majority of their conference is like playing cupcakes because the majority of the teams they're playing against aren't even ranked. So I don't want to hear the Syracuse Wagner thing that they shouldn't have played that game, which is ridiculous to me. And then, outside of that, Syracuse played UConn, and you're supposed to beat UConn. And Syracuse blew them out on the road. A Syracuse team in the past may have barely beat UConn, might have lost to UConn, might have played a 14-10 or 10-7 game against UConn. So, I think Syracuse did better there. And Jim Mora Jr., UConn's gotten some wins here. They've done some good things this season. And UConn is an independent because, in my opinion, they made a really, really bad decision to leave the American Athletic Conference. They wanted to go back to the Big East for men's and women's basketball. And I think, and they had thought that UConn, from everything I was hearing from people and sources that I trust, they thought that they were going to be able to stay in the American and leave their football program there. Well, their football program won 1 to 3 games a season. And Mike Oresco, the commissioner, very close with him, he told me flat out in an interview, the American Athletic Conference commissioner, he said to UConn, if you leave, you're taking it all. You don't get to leave and then leave your football program here. If you're going to go, then you're going to take everything. So UConn's independent, but they're 1 game away from being bowl eligible. They're 5-5 right now, and they're going to play a Liberty team that's been independent as well, that's found their way to bowl games in recent history in multiple years. So, you really can't knock that, Syracuse blowing out UConn when UConn's just won 2 in a row. And granted, it's against BC and UMass. UMass also an independent team. But shutting down Boston College, allowing 3 points to Boston College with a Jeff Hafley offense that's supposed to be passing and running the ball and being multiple, I think that's a good win for UConn, especially in the Northeast, especially when we look at the old Big East. And looking at the fact that Hafley has been doing some good things with Boston College. So I think the win over UConn has a little more value than people give it credit for. And so I'm going to put that there for Syracuse. And then you look at the other 2 games that they won here inside of that 6-0 start, giving credit where credit's due. So 50% of the time you're playing NFL quarterbacks that guys I think are going to get a look there. Like I said, you play UConn, who's a team that's gotten drastically better this season under Jim Mora Jr. And then the Wagner game, I said, whatever, you could throw that out because they did what they were supposed to do. And then you look at the NC State game. NC State was ranked 15th in the nation at the time that they were playing Syracuse. NC State is a darn good team. I know they didn't have Devin Leary, their quarterback, but, I look at, if there's any coach that is resilient and has been resilient, it's Dave Doran. And I don't think maybe NC State Wolfpack, Pack Nation really appreciates them as much as they should. I can't speak for it because I'm not in the center of it, but there was those moments a couple years ago when he was allegedly rumored to be up for the Tennessee job that Josh Heupel ended up getting from UCF, another coach that I've covered for a bit. And there was some people saying like good riddance, who cares, kind of showing like they didn't really appreciate Dave Doran. Doran, beating NC State 24-9, I know they didn't have their starting quarterback, but he usually figures it out, right? They got a good defense. And listen, NC State's defense at this time going into this weekend, best defense in the ACC out of 14 schools, allowing an average of 17.4 points per game. Syracuse, second coming into this week, second in the ACC, allowing 18.4 points per game. So you had the top 2 defenses going up against each other, and Syracuse beat them 24-9. So really, when you look at Syracuse's 6-0 start, for those that don't want to give credit, you got 3 NFL caliber quarterbacks, you got a better UConn team, and you got a top 15 ranked NC State team that had the top defense in the ACC. So before this 3-game losing streak, I don't want to hear anybody say that 6-0 was fake. Are Clemson and Notre Dame better than the teams they played? Yeah, arguably, obviously, Clemson is. I think Notre Dame came in and just pushed them around. And Pittsburgh, I anticipated to do this. I don't like Syracuse playing Pittsburgh, and I don't like Syracuse playing Pittsburgh on the road. Pittsburgh has out-physicaled Syracuse multiple times in recent history. Pat Narduzzi has never had a loss to Dino Babers at home in Pittsburgh. And in the last 11 games now that Syracuse has played Pittsburgh, Syracuse is 2-9 against Pittsburgh in the last 11 games. Pitt is 9-2, and that's playing in Syracuse, out of Syracuse. So, that says something. And in the 7 seasons that Dino's been at Syracuse, anytime he's had to travel to Pittsburgh, he's not getting Doozer's number. And Doozer's a hell of a recruiter. He's a hell of a coach. He's just really talented, and he knows how to beat Syracuse. And after watching that Notre Dame game, I think that, every coach that can run the ball knew that that's what they need to do against Syracuse to secure their victory. And so I'm not surprised at all that we see these coaches running the ball. And I thought Pitt was going to run the ball either way, whether or not that Notre Dame game ever happened. So, I definitely thought that we were going to see Pitt run the ball. And they did, and they did it without Abanikanda, and that says a lot about this team, and it says a lot about their ability to, just have that next man up approach, as I talked about earlier in this matchup. But, I think Syracuse made Slovis look pretty good in this game, so that's frustrating. Servassier Dennis and Deslin Alexander, 2 guys that have both been here on Wake Up Call, they led the team as the top 2 tacklers on the team here. Deslin Alexander had 2.5 sacks on Carlos Del Rio Wilson. Servassier Dennis, as I mentioned before, had 1, and Deslin Alexander playing on the defensive line. For Syracuse, by the numbers, Carlos Del Rio Wilson, we look at the fact that both quarterbacks attempted 23 passes, but Slovis completed double the amount of Carlos Del Rio Wilson. Slovis, new quarterback coming in this season, transferred over and from Arizona, and seeing Slovis go 16 of 23 to Carlos's 8 of 23. Carlos Del Rio Wilson did not throw an interception, close on a couple of these, but we saw different guys get involved. He got the ball out to Damian Elford, to Sean Tucker a couple times, to DeMarcus Adams, as I mentioned, to Trevor Pena, Devon Cooper, and Maximilian Mang, the tight end. Devon Cooper and Trevor Pena and DeMarcus Adams and Damian Elford, these are not guys that aren't good. They're not guys that are not capable of catching the ball. They just don't get thrown to. In the Garrett Schrader offense, it's a lot of Aronde Gadsden. It's a lot of staring him down. So, I feel like, and we've seen Garrett Schrader when he's eluded a defender or 2 or 3, somebody's open down the field, he just kind of chucked it up, and Devon Cooper caught it when there was 3 receivers. I don't feel like Schrader, and I like Schrader, and I never said that he couldn't pass the ball. That's never come out of my mouth. I can't say that about other people in the media, but it's never come from me. And Schrader, to me, the one constructive criticism I would say is to look around the field more, spread the ball out. Everybody knows it's going to Gadsden. And why does everybody know it's going to Gadsden? And if that's not where you're throwing all the time, then people wouldn't know that. So spread it out and give opportunities, because Devon Cooper, Trevor Pena, DeMarcus Adams, Damian Elford, they're all capable, and they all got the ball from Carlos, and I love that. My big positive for Carlos Del Rio Wilson coming in the last game against Notre Dame and playing this entire game against Pitt is that he spreads the ball out. He's unafraid to go down the field, and I really do enjoy that. Marlowe Wax led Syracuse's defense with 13 total tackles. 6 of those were solo, so almost half. 1 tackle for a loss. 3 hits on Slovis, the quarterback. Jihad Carter, defensive back for Syracuse, also had double-digit tackles. He was second with 10. He had 4 solo, and he had an interception in this game, the only interception thrown in the game by either quarterback, and Jihad Carter had it. Jason Simmons Jr., he stepped up in a big way. Defensive back, 8 total tackles, one of those being a solo tackle, got 1 hit on the quarterback. Caleb Okechukwu also had 8 total tackles. He got a sack a tackle for a loss on that sack, and he had a hit on the quarterback as well. Anwar Sparrow, who's had to step up at linebacker for the team, he had 5 tackles. 4 of those were solo. 1 of those was for a loss. Got a hit on the quarterback, and Sparrow forced a fumble in the game. The only player on Syracuse to force a fumble in this game. Multiple guys got hits on the quarterback. Joe Beatty Jr., he got one. Derek McDonald got one. Justin Barron got one, as well as Sparrow, as I mentioned. Okechukwu, Simmons, and Marlowax got 3 hits on the quarterback, and Gear got a hit on the quarterback before coming out of the game. So this wasn't a defense that, this defense was kind of bend but don't break from what I took away from it, right? You got the defense on the field. Syracuse had 8 3-and-outs. 8 drives in this game that were 3-and-outs. You want to talk about the notable stat of the game that really changes things up for Syracuse? 8 3-and-outs. Because your defense in the fourth quarter forces 3 straight 3-and-out drives by Pittsburgh, and you can't come away with a touchdown when they force 3 straight 3-and-outs. Well, it's because you have 8 3-and-outs. Throughout the game, Syracuse struggled to score the ball. They were up 3-0 after the first quarter, but when you look at this and you just break it down, these are Syracuse's drives in the game. You got punt, field goal, punt, field goal, punt, clock ran out and they downed the ball. They come out in the second half, 3 straight punts, a field goal miss, another punt, a field goal, and a safety that they end up getting here. So Syracuse only comes away with 3 field goals in this game. They have 4 punts on 5 drives in the second half. They punt 50% of the time in the first half, only getting 4 drives in the first half, and then a safety immediately, where it just looked easy. It looked like Swiss cheese for Pittsburgh to come through on this Syracuse offensive line. So you got to shore that up. You got to fix it up. You got to figure it out. But ultimately, when you have 8 3-and-outs, that's been Syracuse. Unfortunately, that has been Syracuse this season. And it's of recent history here in these last few weeks. There's been a lot of 3-and-outs, a lot of frustration, a lot of wind out of the sails in the second half against Notre Dame. When you spend 8 drives on 3-and-outs, you're probably not going to win the game. And you can't knock your defense for that when you're put in a situation like that. Pitt's drives, the first drive that they had of the game was the interception that was taken away by Jihad Carter. The second drive that they had was a touchdown. Then they had 2 punts and then a field goal right before halftime. That's demoralizing. The fact that Syracuse allowed Pitt down the field toward the end of the game, or toward the end of the first half, I should say, the fact that they let them down the field to get into field goal range and to make that field goal, I don't care what anybody said, to me that's demoralizing. Whenever you let somebody score within a minute, 2 minutes before half, especially within a minute before halftime, it's a super demoralizing thing. And Pitt got the ball back after the half. They did punt it away, and then, there was 2 interceptions in this game. So Jihad Carter had one of those. On that. There's 2 interceptions in the game. So then another interception there coming out. Then they had a touchdown, and then Pitt ends the game with 4 punts, and you got a bunch of 3-and-outs in that. So it's not like their offense played extremely well. They played good enough to beat Syracuse's lackluster offense. And that's why it reminds me of the Clemson game that happened in Death Valley when A.J. Long had to come in as 4th-string quarterback and the team lost 16-6. It wasn't that Syracuse's defense was awful. It was that the offense just didn't score the ball. And what are you going to do in that case, right? Your defense can only do so much. And these are human beings; they're not robots. So eventually, when you got your defense coming out there over and over and over again, you're going to pay for that at some point. And that's what ended up happening, is that Syracuse ended up eventually having to see that some of these Pitt didn't have a good offensive game. They had a good enough offensive game, right? And pardon me, Slovis only threw 1 interception. I don't know why. Jared Wayne came in, tried 1 pass, and threw an interception. That's the one that I'm seeing here. So just wanted to let that be known, as I wanted to clean that up. So we had Jahad Carter with an interception and Isaiah Johnson, who came in and started in place of Garrett Williams, who is out for the season. Garrett Williams tore his ACL against Notre Dame, and praying and hoping the best for Garrett Williams on a healthy recovery. I believe he was projected to be in the top 40 players drafted in the NFL in the upcoming 2023 NFL draft. I hope they still will draft him high. I know a lot of scouts have been out to see him. I've spoken with them about him, heard some good things about him. So, hoping for the best for Garrett Williams. I mean, there was that game where he forced the fumble, recovered the fumble, and intercepted the ball, and he did that in front of a bunch of scouts. So definitely huge for the Williams family, hoping he gets better. And Isaiah Johnson had to step in a few games ago when Garrett Williams came out, and he played well, and he knocked the ball down toward the end of the game, prevented a touchdown, and then in this game, he gets an interception, right? When you see somebody else come in besides Slovis and attempt to pass, and he's able to get that interception. So a lot of credit to Isaiah Johnson to start this game as the backup corner and to have an interception in the game. So I think when you look at Marlo Wax and Jahad Carter and Jason Simmons Jr. and Caleb Okechukwu and Michael Jones and Anwar Sparrow and Rob Hanna and Isaiah Johnson and Justin Barron and, a lot of these guys out here, they stepped it up and they did a really nice job defensively to give Syracuse a shot and force 4 straight punts by the offense of Pittsburgh toward the end of this game, forcing a punt at the end of the third quarter and then 3 in the fourth quarter. And I think that was the 3 in a row that were all 3 and outs. And so not only did they force a punt, but they forced 3 straight 3 and outs. Syracuse's offense just couldn't get in the end zone. But looking at Carlos Del Rio Wilson, again, in his first start, I believe ever, in college football, because I don't think he ever had a start for Florida. So him having his first college football start, for him to go out there on that one drive where they were way back in their own territory, Syracuse was, and on third down, he somehow gets swallowed up again like he had so many times, but he stays up. I look down, and I'm thinking the play's over. He somehow gets out. I hear the commentators say he somehow has gotten out of this, and somehow he's still up. He runs to the outside, shows his speed, takes off as he was behind the line of scrimmage, gets the first down, then beams the ball downfield to DeMarcus Adams. And yeah, he was off the mark on a couple passes. He had Oronde Gadsden the second wide open for probably a walk-in touchdown, and he overthrew him, went over his head. But, to the people that are going to remember that play where he threw over the head of Oronde Gadsden, I would say to you, without Carlos Del Rio Wilson, that drive would have been the 9th 3 and out for Syracuse. So I give him a lot of credit for staying up, keeping his feet, being strong, somehow, bend but don't break in that collapsed situation in the pocket, roll to the outside, show your speed, show your footwork, have the wherewithal to know where the first down marker is, grab it, find DeMarcus Adams, and give Syracuse a shot to score. And listen, even though they didn't get the touchdown, they did come away with a field goal. So Carlos Del Rio Wilson turned that drive that was nothing into something and came away with at least 3 points. And Syracuse still had an opportunity at that time, down 17-9, where you could get a touchdown and go for a 2-point conversion. So there's something to be said about that, as NC State just doinked in off of the left goalpost their field goal, which has now got them above Wake Forest. NC State is 22 in the nation, Wake is 21, and you just got the healthy bounce that bounced and sent the ball in instead of back. NC State is up 3-0 as Wake Forest struggled and lost to Louisville, committing 6 turnovers in the third quarter alone, which is insane to hear. Some teams don't commit 6 turnovers in 3 or 4 games, and they did it in a quarter. And Wake is on the schedule for Syracuse 2 games from now. They'll go up against Florida State at home, then at Wake and at Boston College. So this is where we're at. Syracuse is on a 3-game losing streak. And, I know that some people want to throw in the towel. But listen, I think Syracuse against BC has a shot of 7-5. But BC is one of those teams that when it's not working, they can turn around and say, hey, you know what? Let's run the ball. Let's do it that way. Florida State's been able to score. Wake's been able to score. And Dave Clawson, like I said, I don't know if there's a better coach against Dino Babers since Dino came to Syracuse that has made more adjustments in the second half than Dave Clawson at Wake Forest, when that team might be totally out of the game in some people's minds, but they're really not. So my biggest takeaways from this: Carlos Del Rio Wilson spread the ball out, which I love. People got involved and show they can catch it, which I love. Carlos showed that he has quick feet and the footwork to get out of things, which I also love. And, I think the defense played it really, really well. Really, really well to give Syracuse a chance. I think they gave Syracuse multiple opportunities, especially in the fourth quarter. So I'm not going to sit here and knock the D at all. If this game was 35-3, if it was 42-0, then we're talking about something. But you end the game 19-9. I don't put that on the defense. I think the defense did a lot. I think the offensive line's got to get it together. I think the play calling's got to be better. I think they got to find a way to get Sean Tucker the ball, because what they're essentially showing these last 3 weeks is basically what it looks like, whether they mean this or not. And I'm pretty confident they don't mean this, but it's like, hey, when we play better teams, we can't run Sean. So it's almost like saying, hey, Sean's not good enough against these better teams because Clemson, Notre Dame, Pitt, they're not giving him the ball. And so that's kind of making me sit here and scratch my head about where are you going with this, that you're not getting your bell cow to run this ball. I mean, and it's making it look like, hey, when we're playing good talent, we're not going to be able to run the ball with Sean. And I don't agree with that. So I hope that hopefully things can get figured out here for Syracuse's offense. I think the play calling, I think if you're going to have Carlos Del Rio Wilson, you got to play to his strengths. I think you got to do a lot more RPO. I think you got to pitch to the outside to Sean Tucker, especially if the line's going to collapse. If you got 1.3 seconds, you can pitch the ball out. And if everybody's collapsing on Carlos Del Rio and Sean having the speed he does, then in my opinion, he's going to get a couple yards. And I'd love 2 yards more than losing 7 on a sack or 5 on a sack. So I think there's better play calling to be had. I think there's ways to find Sean Tucker. And I do like the fact that Carlos Del Rio Wilson has speed and that he's willing to get the ball downfield and looking for more than just Aronde Gadsden. Aronde's good, okay? We know Aronde's good, but you can't just throw to one guy. That's very easy for a defense to figure out. And I think defensively for Syracuse, they've done a lot of good things. I'm not going to sit here and knock Andre Schmidt when he's almost 100% when it comes to field goals, and he knocks all the extra points in. Andre Schmidt, the Lou Groza Award, top kicker in the nation. He's up for that. Constantly talked about that last year, this year. So I don't think that Andre Schmidt is the problem. He missed a 46-yarder, responded by kicking a 49-yarder. So 3 more yards and he did it. So, I'm not going to put it on special teams. Trevor Pena, I mean, most of the time that guy's catching the ball. Most of the time he's not fair catching. And in this one, you saw him. He kind of was there, and then he let the ball go by him. And as soon as Servassier Dennis caught it at the 1, I think he thought it was going to bounce into the end zone, and he kind of looked up, shook his head, and he realized, and he's frustrated, and he'll make adjustments to that. But I don't put, Trevor Pena, a guy's going to have a bad play or 2. Trevor Pena's not going to have 10. So, I don't think it's Pena's fault either. And I think the rest of special teams is doing good. I think, it's the glaring issue right now is the offense, and some of that's play calling, and some of that's Garrett Schrader not being out there, and some of that is the offensive line. So, that's where they're at right now. Syracuse has to make adjustments. And other teams that make better adjustments that you do are going to kick your tail until you figure out how to do it. And so now it comes down to the coaching staff. You can't sit here and whine about injuries because you can't do anything about them. And if you're going to do that, you might as well not play the games. You can't sit here and say Carlos Del Rio Wilson can't do this, this, and this, because I've seen him do some nice things. And, you can't sit here and say Sean Tucker's not capable, because I don't believe that either. So you're going to have to find ways to get it done. And with Wake Forest coming up, Wake Forest is multiple, and they've had multiple guys in the backfield get rushing touchdowns this season. Justice Ellison leads the team with 454 yards coming into this week against NC State on the road. 4.6 yards a carry, 4 rushing touchdowns. Christian Turner, 353 yards, 4.2 yards a carry, 5 rushing touchdowns. Quentin Cooley, 126 yards, 4.5 yards a carry, 2 rushing touchdowns, and then Sam Hartman has a rushing touchdown as a starting quarterback. So you got these guys all getting carries, another three-headed running back situation. When did Syracuse see that? Notre Dame. How hard is that going to be? I mean, people talk about Sam Hartman all the time. 22 touchdowns, 6 picks, 2,026 yards. But at the same time, you got 3 running backs. And if Wake is watching any of these games, which I know they are, and Dave Clawson's already made adjustments against Syracuse teams that weren't as good as the team is this year, that weren't bowl-eligible teams, he's going to be ready. They're going to run the ball. They got 3 guys to do it, and you got Sam Hartman. So, they're going to, like I said, Syracuse is going to have to figure out how to stop the run, how to contain the run, and how to not let, when you got 4 minutes left in the game, to not run that down under 2 minutes because you're just failing to stop the run. So I will say that about the defense is they got to get better at stopping the run. But there's a lot of good things the defense did in this game. And when you're down by 1 score, and your defense gets 3 straight 3-and-outs, within all of the, and granted the score came at certain points. Well, actually, you're down by 1 score. So, I mean, ultimately when you go back and you look at it, you say, okay, well, before that safety, how many opportunities did the defense create for the Syracuse offense? So, something to look at. Florida State is next up on the docket for the Orange, and we know that they're going to score. I told everybody to lay off of Mike Norvell. Covered him all 4 years when he was coach in Memphis, recruited well, sent a ton of guys to the NFL. A lot of guys are either starting or in the backfield as one of the first 2 guys for NFL teams. I think there's 5 or 6 running backs from Memphis that are out there now, and he's got other guys that are there. Great at recruiting, great at getting guys out there. Did a great job at Memphis to keep them relevant after Justin Fuente left and went to Virginia Tech, and the question was, can they keep it going without Fuente? The answer was yes, thanks to Mike Norvell and his staff. And I told people, listen, let him be at Florida State, give him time. They didn't play a full season in the COVID year, bunch of games called off. And last year, you look at it and you say, okay, they can get better. But this year they're 5-3. They're 1 game away from bowl eligibility, and they're playing Miami tonight, so they got a good shot at that. In the backfield, they've had multiple guys have rushing touchdowns here, and which is just insane. Treshaun Ward, 72 attempts, 488 yards, 6.8 yards a carry, 3 rushing touchdowns. Trey Benson, 483 yards, just 5 yards away from Ward, and he has 6.7 yards a carry, 3 rushing touchdowns. Lawrence Toafili has 315 yards, 4.8 yards a carry, 5 rushing touchdowns. Jordan Travis, the quarterback, 215 yards, 5 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns. And then you got Rodney Hill, who's got a touchdown, 113 yards, 6.3 yards a carry. C.J. Campbell at running back, 23 yards, 7.7 yards a carry. He's only had 3 attempts, but he has a rushing touchdown. So you got all these guys with rushing touchdowns. You got 6 players on your team with rushing touchdowns. 5 of those are running backs. 2 of them have come, 5 of those guys that have scored in the backfield running the ball have been running backs. Your quarterback has gone out and done it, and you have your 2 top running backs averaging 6.8 and 6.7 yards a carry, and you have everybody that's had 18 or more carries averaging just around 5 yards a carry, if not more. You got Rodney Hill at 6.3. You got 3 running backs averaging over 6 yards a carry, more than halfway to a first down. Jordan Travis averaging 5, and Lawrence averaging 5 yards per carry. That's insane. Again, like I said, they're going to eat that up playing up against Syracuse. Travis coming into the game against Miami, over 2,000 yards passing, 61.9% completion percentage, 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So the only other team that Syracuse has left on the regular season schedule is Boston College. So let's take a look at Boston College and what Boston College is doing at this point. And BC this season is at the bottom of the ACC's Atlantic Division. They're 2-7 overall. Not looking good here, but statistically, if you look at the fact of how are they running the ball, as they'll be the last game of the season for Syracuse, and that game is going to be on the road. You look at what they've been able to do. Pat Garwo III, 302 yards, 3.2 yards a carry, 2 rushing touchdowns. Alex Broom, 186 yards, 5.3 yards a carry, 1 rushing touchdown. And Jaden Williams, their wide receiver, 8 yards, on 2 attempts, one of those going for a touchdown. And Phil Jerkovich, their quarterback, has had a touchdown as well. So, that's where BC is at. And so they don't look great, right? Because they're getting away from that. That's what they've been doing, is getting away from the run. When they fired Steve Adazio, who made 6 bowls in 7 years, I think I've said 7 and 8, 6 bowls in 7 years. And when Adazio did what he did there, I don't know how you fire him, especially in a year where you're going to a bowl game. So that made even less sense to me. But they let him go, and Jeff Hafley comes in, and he wants to be multiple on offense. He doesn't want to just run the ball and play good defense like Pitt does and like Syracuse used to do. He wants to be more than that. So he's trying to change things up, and it just really hasn't come through. Now, Emmett Morehead has been their quarterback with Jerkovich out. Emmett Morehead had a hell of a game against Duke at home, but they lost that game 38-31 by 1 score. Emmett Morehead, 27 of 45, attempting 45 passes to only 28 rushes, 330 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. So BC is another team that you can't, lose focus on. Last week, they looked horrible against UConn, and this week against a Duke team who's been scoring the ball really well under Friday Night Lights, they score 31 points, and Morehead, who comes into the season as your backup quarterback, has 4 touchdowns, 330 yards, and doesn't throw a single pick in the game. So Syracuse does not have an easy road going forward from here if BC is going to be able to throw it. But really, my biggest concerns for Syracuse are going to come on the ground, where Florida State has 3 guys, like I said, averaging over 6 yards a carry. It's insane to have 1 guy doing that. They have 3 of them, and you have Jordan Travis. And then looking at Wake Forest having a 3-headed running back situation as well. And we know what Notre Dame did with a 3-headed backfield. So these are going to be some potential long games for Syracuse if the defense can't shore up the one biggest sore thumb that they have, which is stopping the run. But beyond that, the defense gave Syracuse a chance in this game against Pittsburgh, and the offense just wasn't able to capitalize. This wasn't a special teams blunder. This wasn't a defensive blunder. This was 8 3-and-out drives by Syracuse that will kill you. And it did. And they lost a very low-scoring game. And like I said, Pat Narduzzi would love a 17-6 game. Syracuse played right into the hands of that. The game ends 19-9. Syracuse is bowl eligible no matter what happens the next 3 games. I ask people to show up for Florida State. I shouldn't have to beg you to do that. You should want to show up more than anything right now, because some fans will go, I'm not going because they put crap on the field and they got a 3-game losing streak and I'm pissed off. I think this is the perfect time for a fan to show up because the guys need you. And if they've had their win taken out of their sails on a 3-game losing streak and they show up to their home stadium and it's half empty, they're not going to want to play for that city. They're not going to want to be out there for that, and that's going to demoralize them even more. So show up to the game, get yourself out there, be a part of it. It's the last home game Syracuse has this season, and it's the only home game that they have in the entire month of November. Show up against Florida State. Be loud, be proud, be orange, as your announcer says, and make sure that you show up. Because, like I say about people that don't vote, then you have no right to speak about anything. And people that don't go to the games, that are capable, that have the money, and can get up to the dome and go to the games, don't complain about the team if you're not willing to go and support them. We look forward to talking with you soon. This has been a bonus edition of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora here inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. And you can listen to us and watch us during our normal times every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on YouTube.com, Facebook.com, and MixLR.com/WakeUpCallDT. You can also find us on Facebook.com/LiveNowDT, and you can find us on WakeUpCallDT.com's homepage, so make sure you do that. Once the shows go live, you can check out our archives. Basically, any one of the outlets that you love to listen to, you're going to find us on Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, iTunes and Apple Podcasts, MixLR, Player FM, Podbean, Podvine, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, just by searching Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT. T, you can also ask Alexa, as well as your Google Home devices, to play the latest episode of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, and they'll do that for you as well. A big shout out to our incredible partners in this bonus edition of Wake Up Call, Under Promise, Over Deliver, and that's what all of my wonderful partners do in our community. Cafe Kubal, Carvel DeWitt, the Wildcat Sports Pub, Witty Wicks, shout out to them. They had a fantastic 11-year anniversary, 4 years in Township 5. Y'all showed up in droves all day long, coming out to 190 Township Boulevard in Camillus, New York, to celebrate their 11-year anniversary. And you supported local, you supported Central New York, you supported local business and small business. I can't thank you enough. On behalf of Aubrey and her entire team, Witty Wicks had a fantastic 11-year anniversary, which makes you feel really good for being in business, really good for sticking it out, and really good for navigating through the pandemic. You all showed up. You spend your hard-earned money locally, and I can't thank you enough for that. Big shout out to PB&J's Lunchbox, Avicoli's, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, Chick-fil-A Watertown, Mother's Cupboard, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, Chick-fil-A Cicero and Chick-fil-A Clay, Pizza Man, and Honda City of Liverpool. Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora is the proud multimedia marketing partner exclusively of your Lemoyne College Dolphins. It is Fins Up every single month on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, and we have Dolphin Time airing every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. On the first and third Wednesday of each month, you have the opportunity for AD and DT with Athletics Director Bob Beretta and myself, Dan Tortora. Every second and fourth Wednesday, you have the opportunity to tune in and hear from student athletes, coaches, administration, future Dolphins, and alumni in our Dolphin Dive specials. You can check out the whole archive of all of that, including our exclusive 6 months of tracking realignment and reclassification as Lemoyne eyes potentially making a move from Division II to Division I. Those conversations with Athletics Director Bob Beretta and President Dr. Linda Lemura are exclusive to Wake Up Call. If anybody else has told you that they have the scoop and they have the story on the move potentially to Division I, simply, they're lying to you. If you want to check the tape, we have 6 months of those specials, and you can watch our exclusive series on realignment and reclassification on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, as well as directly on the Lemoyne tab of wakeupcalldt.com. For more information on your Dolphins, go to LemoyneDolphins.com. Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora is also the proud exclusive multimedia marketing partner of your Bryan and Stratton College Bobcats of Syracuse. I want to shout out Tay Baker this week for having his first ever game as a head coach of the Bryan and Stratton women's basketball team at Syracuse. I want to shout out Clay Gagan Sherman this week for having his first ever game coaching as the head coach of the Bryan and Stratton men's basketball team for Bryan and Stratton of Syracuse. They're both in action this weekend. Shout out to them. I want to shout out the men's and women's soccer teams at Bryan and Stratton that are reigning national champions. This coming week, they will be vying for yet another national championship berth and opportunity at taking more hardware home. Big shout out to Nick Dimitrievsky, the men's soccer head coach, and the women's soccer head coach, Alex Grigorita. And also a big time shout out to Sean Peak, who's building the first ever baseball program in the history of Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse. All of these exclusives on the BSC Syracuse tab on wakeupcalldt.com and by subscribing to youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. For more information, go to syracuse.bscbobcats.com. With that being said, I want to thank you for always watching and listening to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, be it live or in our archive or both. And of course, for being with us in these impromptu, right? I didn't tell anybody we were doing a post game, and I didn't tell anybody that Tortora and Alfred was going to air late last night. We did a late night talk show. We went until past 1 o'clock in the morning, and the amount of you that watched that show, incredible, without any prior promotion. And the amount of you watching tonight, incredible, without any prior promotion. So thank you for searching for us. Thank you for looking for us. Thank you for staying dedicated and staying true to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. I appreciate your patronage and your loyalty, and I can't thank you enough for showing up when I ask you to and for showing up when I don't even have to. So thank you for that. Inside the Cafe Kubal Studios, Wake Up Call can be found on Facebook at Wake Up Call DT, Twitter at Call DT, and Instagram at Wake Up Call _DT. In the meantime, head out to our studio partner, Cafe Kubal, 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 401 South Salina Street, all in Syracuse, inside of their double-decker cafe on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York, and, of course, in their drive-thru on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road at Sweetheart Corners in North Syracuse. I never know how to say goodbye, so I will simply say see you later. If it was up to me, I'd probably stay on the air with you all night because I do what I love, and I love what I do. And it's because of the man upstairs that allows me to do that. Thank you, God. Thank you to hard work, dedication, and determination. And thank you to every bit of hate that I've ever received, because you have always, completely and truly, made me stronger, more excited, more successful, and more ready for everything that is to come. This has been our postgame show. Thanks for watching and listening.
I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something.